A millionaire tests his cook skills at an exclusive party, but her attitude changed both their lives. Before we start the story, comment below and tell us which city you're watching from. Enjoy the story, everyone. Sophia worked as a cook at the Lancaster mansion. The estate was a symbol of wealth and excess. Sophia felt invisible to the residents, especially to the heir, Henry Lancaster. Henry was confident, charming, and incredibly rich. He walked the halls with an air of superiority that seemed to demand reverence. Sophia watched him from afar, always curious how someone with so much could seem so uninterested in life. That morning, while preparing breakfast, Sophia heard agitated murmurs from the main hall. Curious, she discreetly approached and saw Henry arguing with the mansion's event coordinator. "How could the head chef quit?" Henry asked, visibly irritated. "We have a party for 300 people tonight." The coordinator tried to calm him, but Henry wasn't in the mood to listen. Then he looked toward the kitchen and saw Sophia, his blue eyes fixed on her for a moment before he approached. "You're the cook here, right? Sophia, isn't it?" he asked, his tone more cold than friendly. "Yes, that's me, Mr. Lancaster," she replied, maintaining her composure. "I need you tonight. I want you to oversee dinner at the party. We have no choice." Sophia's eyes widened. "Me? But I'm just the cook." "Exactly. You're the only one who knows what to do in the kitchen right now. I'm counting on you. Can you do this, or should I cancel the party?" he asked, his tone dripping with sarcasm. Sophia hesitated. She knew this was far beyond her role, but she also felt it was her chance to show something more. Finally, she took a deep breath and nodded. "All right, I'll do it." The rest of the day was a whirlwind. Sophia organized the ingredients, delegated tasks to the team, and prepared the dishes with almost military precision. Although nervous, her focus on cooking helped her forget the external pressures. As the sun began to set, Henry appeared in the kitchen, watching her with curiosity. "Looks like you know what you're doing," he commented, leaning against the counter. "Cooking is the only thing I know how to do," Sophia replied without looking at him. Henry laughed but didn't respond. Instead, he continued watching her, intrigued by her determination. That night, as the guests arrived, Sophia stayed behind the scenes, overseeing the dishes. The hall was filled with people, dressed in luxurious attire, laughing and chatting as if nothing in the world could touch them. Sophia, however, couldn't shake the feeling of being out of place. Then Henry appeared again, this time wearing an elegant tuxedo. "I want you out there," he said. "What?" Sophia asked, confused. "You created these dishes. I want you out there to make sure everything goes perfectly. Besides," he added with a smile, "it would be nice to see someone genuine among all those fake faces." Sophia looked at him, surprised by the sincerity in his tone. Despite hesitating, she agreed. She put on a simple dress she always carried in her bag, tied her hair back, and headed to the hall. Entering the hall, Sophia felt the eyes turn towards her. Some guests watched her with curiosity, while others, like Victoria Ashcroft, cast judgmental glances. Victoria, a socialite known for her beauty and arrogance, approached Henry, who stood beside Sophia. "Who is this?" Victoria asked, her tone filled with disdain. "This is Sophia," Henry replied, unperturbed. "She's responsible for the dinner everyone is praising." Victoria raised an eyebrow, clearly uncomfortable with Sophia's presence. "Interesting. Well, I hope she knows her place." Sophia smiled, keeping her calm. "My place is where my work takes me," she replied firmly. Henry laughed, and Victoria walked away, clearly annoyed. Sophia, on the other hand, felt proud for not being intimidated. As the night progressed, Sophia was approached by an investor who praised her creative vision in the dishes and asked to hear more about her ideas. Without realizing it, she attracted the attention of several guests who were intrigued by her honest and innovative approach to cooking. Henry watched from afar, impressed. Sophia not only stood out, but seemed to challenge the norms of the elitist environment in which he lived. When the party ended, Henry approached her in the hallway. "You surprised everyone tonight, including me," he said. Sophia shrugged, trying not to show how much those words meant to her. "I just did my job." Henry laughed. "No, you've done much more than that, and I want you to keep doing it." Sophia looked at him, puzzled. "What does that mean?" "It means I want you to work with me on a project. Something big, something that will change everything." Sophia stayed silent, processing what she had just heard. She knew that accepting meant stepping out of her comfort zone. Saying yes to Henry's invitation could mark the start of something extraordinary, or a complete disaster. The next morning, Sophia woke up still trying to process the previous night's events. Henry's proposal echoed in her mind. Something big. Something that will change everything. The idea was tempting, but Henry's arrogance made her doubt whether it was truly about her talent or just another move to boost his own prestige. She was finishing tidying up the kitchen when Henry showed up again. This time, he wasn't dressed in the tuxedo from the night before, but still carried the same air of superiority. "Good morning, Sophia. Have you thought about my proposal?" he asked, straight to the point. Sophia looked up, trying to hide her irritation at his authoritative tone. "I'm still thinking about it. I don't make important decisions that quickly." Henry gave a crooked smile, crossing his arms. "Interesting. I thought someone like you who enjoys challenges would be more decisive. Maybe I was wrong." Sophia put the knife down on the counter, feeling her temper rise. "Listen here, Mr. Lancaster. I work hard, and my hesitation isn't because I'm afraid of the challenge. It's because of you. I'm not sure I want to work with someone who barely respects me as a professional." Henry's smile faltered for a moment, replaced by a surprised expression, but he quickly regained his composure. "Well, perhaps I've been too blunt." He took a step back as if reconsidering. "But Sophia, what I said last night is still true. You're talented, and I don't usually get that wrong." Sophia held his gaze. Beneath the arrogance, there seemed to be something genuine, a desire to accomplish something meaningful, perhaps? She wasn't sure yet. "I'll give you my answer by the end of the day," she said at last. Henry smiled again, this time almost sincerely. "Great. I'll be waiting." Throughout the day, some of the mansion's staff approached Sophia, curious about her presence at the party. The cook, who usually worked behind the scenes, was now the center of attention, something she had never sought. But what bothered her most was how much Henry seemed to enjoy it. He was the kind of person who made everything revolve around himself, and Sophia didn't want to be just another pawn in his game. While reflecting, she received a thank you note from one of the guests at the party, a prominent investor, praising her vision and expressing interest in discussing her culinary ideas further. This made her wonder, could Henry really be offering her an opportunity and not just using her? By late afternoon, Sophia decided she needed to confront Henry directly. She walked into the mansion's meeting room, where Henry was reviewing some documents. He looked up when she entered, smiling as if he already knew what she was going to say. "Finally," he said, gesturing for her to sit down. "I haven't accepted yet," Sophia replied, remaining standing. "I want to understand what you really expect from me before making a decision." Henry leaned back in his chair as if preparing for a debate. "It's simple. I want to create something unique, a restaurant that combines luxury with authenticity, something that redefines fine dining, and you're the right person for it." "Why?" Sophia asked, crossing her arms. "Why me? There are hundreds of renowned chefs who'd jump at the chance to work with you." Henry hesitated, which was rare. He seemed to be searching for the right words. "Because you're not like them. You're not driven by fame or status. You're real. And that's what's missing in this world." Sophia blinked, surprised by the sincerity in his tone. For the first time, Henry seemed less like an arrogant heir and more human. "You're saying you want to change the concept of fine dining?" she asked, now intrigued. Henry nodded. "Exactly, and I believe we can do it together." Sophia took a deep breath. It was a risk, but it was also the opportunity of a lifetime. "All right, I accept," she said finally. Henry smiled, standing up from his chair. "Great, we start tomorrow." The next day was a deep dive into the project. Henry took her to a building downtown where he planned to open the restaurant. The space was vast, with glass walls offering a breathtaking view of the city. Sophia was impressed, but also felt intimidated. This was much bigger than anything she had ever done. "Welcome to your new stage," Henry said, spreading his arms as if presenting the place. Sophia walked through the space, imagining how she could transform it to reflect her vision. But while she dreamed, Henry was already giving orders to architects and designers. "I want something sophisticated yet accessible, something that says exclusive without being pretentious," he said, as others took notes frantically. Sophia watched in silence, feeling a mix of admiration and frustration. Henry was undeniably competent but also domineering. She knew she would need to find a way to balance her ideas with his. Later, as they reviewed the menu, the first conflict arose. Henry wanted visually impressive dishes, while Sophia insisted that the taste and the story behind the ingredients should be the priority. "People eat with their eyes first," Henry said, as if it were obvious. "And then they get disappointed if the taste doesn't match the appearance," Sophia retorted. "Sophia, I understand you have a passionate vision, but this restaurant needs to be commercially viable. We can't ignore the customer's expectations." "And you can't ignore the essence of cuisine," she replied, crossing her arms. "If we're going to do something unique, we need to do it right." Henry sighed, running a hand through his hair. "All right, we'll find a balance. But remember, Sophia, in this game, presentation is as important as content." Sophia knew she was stepping into unfamiliar territory. But for the first time, she felt she had something to prove. Not to Henry, but to herself. "Let's play a little game with those who only read the comments. Type pizza in the comments. Only those who get this far will understand. Now let's continue with the story." The next morning, Sophia entered the Lancaster mansion to get the final details before meeting Henry at the restaurant building. She still felt a mix of anxiety and excitement about the project. As challenging as it was to deal with Henry, there was something undeniably thrilling about working on something so big. "Sophia!" Henry's firm voice echoed from the hallway, making her stop in her tracks. She sighed before turning to face him. He walked toward her with determined steps, holding a cell phone in one hand and a folder in the other. "We're already late," he said, without even a good morning. "I hope you're prepared because today is going to be intense." Sophia raised an eyebrow. "Late? I thought the meeting was at 10. It's only 9:30. Henry stopped, analyzing her with that critical look that deeply irritated her. "In my world, being on time is being late. I expect more from you than just a simple cook, Sophia." Sophia crossed her arms, feeling her blood boil. "And I expect more from a leader than arrogant orders, Henry. We are not robots you can program to follow your absurd rules." For a moment, Henry seemed surprised, but soon his expression returned to its usual mask of superiority. "What I expect, Sophia, is that you rise to the occasion for this project. Maybe I was wrong about your capabilities." Sophia stepped forward, facing him directly. "And maybe I was wrong to think you could work as a team." The tension in the hallway was almost palpable. Neither wanted to back down, but eventually, Henry gave a small smile and let out a sigh. "All right, you want me to be less Henry Lancaster?" he asked, slightly teasing. "We can start with that, but I expect the same level of professionalism from you." "You'll have it as long as you treat me as a partner and not a piece in your game," Sophia replied, still firm. Henry just nodded before starting to walk toward the exit. "Let's go. The architect is already waiting for us." The restaurant building seemed more alive that day. Teams of architects and designers were scattered around, discussing plans, outlining ideas, and adjusting details. Sophia again felt intimidated by the grandeur of the place, but she didn't let it show. Henry began explaining the changes he had planned for the layout. As he spoke, Sophia approached one of the architects to better understand how the kitchen space would be configured. "And this area here?" she asked, pointing to a small space next to the main hall. "It's marked as a pantry, but it would be better used for storing fresh ingredients." The architect hesitated before answering. "Mr. Lancaster suggested we keep this space for imported wine storage." Sophia turned to Henry, who was watching from afar. "Henry, can we talk about this?" He approached, adjusting his tie while giving a slight smile. "Is something wrong, Sophia?" "Yes. This area could be better used as storage for fresh ingredients. It's more practical for the chefs and reduces waste." Henry chuckled softly. "I see your point, but the target audience for this restaurant values imported wines as much as the food. We need to cater to them." Sophia narrowed her eyes. "And what about the team that's going to make this restaurant a success? Isn't that important?" The architect glanced between them, clearly uncomfortable with the exchange. Henry took a deep breath, looking at the plans. "Fine, we'll do it your way. But I hope this change is worth it." "It will be," Sophia replied confidently. Later, while reviewing the menu, the disagreements continued. Sophia wanted to focus on local and sustainable ingredients, while Henry insisted on including sophisticated imported options that he believed would attract a high-end clientele. People pay a premium for exclusivity, Sophia, he argued, and that means ingredients they can't get anywhere else. Exclusivity doesn't have to come from imported ingredients. It can come from creativity and flavor, she countered. What we offer needs to have soul, not just a price tag. Henry leaned back in his chair, studying her thoughtfully. You're stubborn, you know that? And you're relentless. She shot back without hesitation. For a moment, silence settled between them. Then Henry gave a smile that was almost genuine. I think that's why we're going to make this work. Sophia sighed but couldn't help a faint smile. The day was exhausting but productive. When they finished, Henry offered Sophia a ride home. On the way, the atmosphere felt less tense, almost friendly. You did well today, Sophia, he said suddenly. But I hope you know things are only going to get harder from here. Sophia glanced at him, surprised by the sincerity in his tone. Harder? Working with you is challenge enough, Henry laughed. Fair. But I'm serious. We're taking on something big. And big projects always come with big risks. I know, she replied, looking out the window. But I'm ready for it. At least I think I am. Henry glanced at her, seeming to consider her words. I hope I'm ready too, he said quietly, almost as if speaking to himself. Sophia turned to him, but before she could ask what he meant, the car stopped in front of her building. See you tomorrow, Sophia, Henry said with a slight nod. See you tomorrow, she replied, stepping out of the car. As she climbed up to her apartment, Sophia felt a mix of exhaustion and satisfaction. As challenging as working with Henry was, she knew this project was the opportunity of a lifetime. And somehow, she felt Henry was more invested than he let on. In the days that followed, Sophia and Henry began working at a smoother pace. The team of architects and designers had already transformed the initial ideas into a solid plan, and now the focus was on the details. The restaurant's concept, the menu, and the customer experience. Sophia, still adjusting to the scale of everything, began to notice that Henry was also making changes. He listened more to her ideas and asked questions that showed genuine interest. So why are local ingredients so important to you? He asked one morning as they reviewed the menu. Sophia looked at him, surprised by the question. Because local ingredients tell a story. They connect the restaurant to the community. Plus, they're fresher and have a smaller environmental impact. Henry nodded, thoughtful. Makes sense. I guess I've never stopped to think about the impact beyond what's on the plate. Sophia gave a faint smile. Maybe that's why you needed me for this project. Henry laughed, leaning back in his chair. Maybe. But don't get too full of yourself, Sophia. I still make the final decisions. Sophia rolled her eyes, but there was a playful tone between them. For the first time, she felt they might actually make a good team. Later, while reviewing the kitchen layout, Sophia suggested some changes to optimize the space. If we place the prep stations closer to the service area, we can speed up the delivery time for dishes, she explained. Henry, reviewing the plans beside her, nodded. Sounds logical. Let's make it happen. Sophia was surprised by how easily he agreed. You're agreeing too quickly? Where's the stubborn Henry I first met? He laughed. Let's just say I'm learning. You have good ideas, Sophia, and I know talent when I see it. Sophia felt her cheeks warm slightly, but looked away before he could notice. Well, I'm glad you're seeing this now. Henry smiled, but said nothing more. Days turned into weeks, and the restaurant began to take shape. Sophia became more and more involved in the project, and Henry seemed to trust her with decisions he would have tightly controlled before. One afternoon, while discussing the ambiance of the main dining area, Henry suggested something unexpected. What do you think about an open area? A small indoor garden where customers can see some of the herbs we use in the dishes. Sophia looked at him, surprised. That's an amazing idea. Where did that come from? Henry shrugged with a shy smile. Maybe I'm learning a few things from you, but don't tell anyone. Sophia laughed, feeling for the first time that Henry was becoming more approachable, more human. One night, as they were finalizing the menu, Henry made a request that surprised Sophia. I want you to be the face of the restaurant. Sophia frowned, confused. What do you mean? I want you to be the head chef, not just running the kitchen, but the person customers know and admire. You have passion and authenticity, and that's rare. It's exactly what this place needs." Sophia was silent, processing his words. It was a huge offer, but also a heavy responsibility. She had never imagined being so upfront in such a grand project. "I don't know if I'm ready for this," she finally said. Henry leaned forward with a serious look. "You are. I know you are, and I'll be by your side to make sure it works." Sophia looked at him, feeling a strange mix of fear and courage. For the first time, she truly believed she could do it. The restaurant was nearing its opening, but Sophia knew the real challenge was yet to come. With Henry by her side, she felt stronger than ever, but she also knew there was more at stake than just the project's success. The restaurant was almost ready. The team worked tirelessly, adjusting the final details of the decor, training, and operational processes. Every corner of the place was coming to life, and the vision Sophia and Henry had planned was materializing. Despite the intense pace, Sophia felt fulfilled. For the first time, she was leaving her mark on something grand. Henry, on the other hand, seemed more reserved than usual. He still maintained a professional and demanding tone, but Sophia noticed he was quieter, as if something was distracting him. One morning, while Sophia was adjusting the presentation of dishes for the official menu, Henry walked into the kitchen. He watched her for a few seconds before speaking, which was unusual. He usually started with orders or questions. "These dishes look great," he finally said. "But I was thinking maybe we could add something bolder, something unexpected." Sophia looked at him, intrigued. "Bolder? What kind of idea do you have?" Henry ran a hand through his hair, clearly uncomfortable. He rarely hesitated to express his opinions, but he seemed to be choosing his words carefully. "I'm not sure exactly. Maybe something that reflects the energy you've brought to this project, something more authentic." Sophia stopped what she was doing and looked at him, surprised. "That's probably the most human thing you've said since we started this." Henry laughed, though his expression was still hard to read. "I'm just telling the truth, Sophia. You've been the heart of this place, and I think that's what we need to capture." There was a moment of silence between them. Sophia looked away, focusing again on the dishes, while Henry remained standing, as if he wanted to say something more, but couldn't find the words. Later that same day, Henry called Sophia to review the final layout of the dining area. As she examined the plans, he moved closer to her, perhaps a bit more than necessary. "Do you think we're ready?" he asked, his voice lower than usual. Sophia looked up to meet his gaze. "I think we're as ready as we can be. But there will always be adjustments to make once we start." Henry nodded slowly, but his eyes remained fixed on her. Sophia felt a slight discomfort but said nothing. There was something in Henry's expression she couldn't understand. It was as if he was trying to figure out something within himself. "Are you okay?" she asked, breaking the silence. He blinked as if being pulled back to reality. "Yes, I am. Just thinking." Sophia smiled slightly, trying to lighten the mood. "That's dangerous, Lancaster. Thinking too much can be bad for you." Henry laughed, but there was a strange tone in his laughter. "Maybe you're right." In the following weeks, Sophia began to notice subtle changes in Henry's behavior. He seemed less confident, almost distracted. It wasn't uncommon to see him lost in thought during meetings or making comments that felt more personal than professional. One evening, after a long day of work, they were alone in the restaurant, checking the final touches on the lighting. Sophia was adjusting one of the fixtures when Henry called out to her. "Sophia, have you thought about what you'll do after this?" he asked, leaning against one of the tables. Sophia looked at him, puzzled. "After this? I mean, this project is my main focus right now. I haven't really thought about what's next." Henry glanced away, as if trying to hide something. "I just wondered if you planned to go back to your old routine or if you'd want to keep being part of something bigger." Sophia walked over to him, crossing her arms. "Is this your way of saying you're planning to fire me before we even open?" Henry let out a nervous laugh. "Of course not. Just forget it." It was a silly question. Sophia frowned, but chose not to press further. She could tell there was more behind his question, but Henry wasn't the type to open up easily. That night, when Henry returned home, he felt more confused than ever. He collapsed onto his couch, running his hands over his face. He couldn't stop thinking about Sophia, about the way she spoke, the passion she put into every detail, and how she made him question everything he thought he knew about himself. It was frustrating. He had never allowed himself to feel this way about anyone, especially someone so different from him. Sophia was stubborn, challenging, but also incredibly talented and genuine. She wasn't afraid to stand up to him, and it made him feel something he couldn't name. Henry took a deep breath, closing his eyes. He knew he needed to focus on the restaurant, but somehow Sophia had become the center of his thoughts. With the restaurant's grand opening just 2 weeks away, the tension was palpable. Sophia and Henry worked tirelessly, but while Sophia kept her focus on every detail, Henry seemed increasingly distracted. He struggled to maintain his professional demeanor, but his mind often wandered, especially when Sophia was nearby. That morning, as Sophia organized the final training schedule for the staff, Henry walked into the room. He looked different, less confident than usual. He stopped beside her and crossed his arms, watching her in silence for a few moments. "I need to talk to you," he finally said. Sophia looked up at him, surprised by his serious tone. "About the restaurant?" "Not exactly," he replied, glancing away briefly. "Can you come with me to the garden?" Sophia hesitated but nodded, curious about what he wanted to say. The garden was one of the most peaceful spots on the property. The flowers were in full bloom, and the soft sound of water from a small fountain filled the air. Henry stopped near a wooden bench, running a hand through his hair as if searching for the right words. "Sophia," he began, looking at her with a mix of nervousness and determination. "Over these past months, working with you, I've realized you're more than I imagined." Sophia frowned, confused. "More than you imagined? What does that mean?" Henry took a deep breath, seeming to wrestle with himself. "I don't know how to say this in a way that makes sense. You make me question things. About myself, about what I want, about how I see the world." Sophia felt her heart race but kept her tone steady. "Henry, what are you trying to say?" He took a step closer, his eyes locked on hers. "I'm saying that I think I feel something for you, Sophia. Something beyond admiration or professional respect." The silence that followed was almost deafening. Sophia stood frozen, trying to process his words. Henry, always so confident and arrogant, looked vulnerable for the first time. She began, her mind racing. "This is a lot to process right now." Henry nodded, visibly uncomfortable. "I know. I didn't expect it to be easy, but I had to tell you. I don't want this to interfere with work, and if you'd rather pretend this conversation never happened, I'll understand." Sophia took a deep breath, trying to organize her thoughts. "I need time to think about this. This project means a lot to me, and I don't want anything to jeopardize it." Henry forced a smile. "Of course. I just wanted you to know." The following days were marked by a strange tension between them. Henry became more reserved, avoiding unnecessary discussions and focusing on the restaurant preparations. Sophia, on the other hand, tried to ignore the whirlwind of emotions she was feeling. Her admiration for Henry was changing, and it made her uneasy. "Let's play a game with those who only read the comments?" Type Coca-Cola in the comments. Only those who read this far will understand. Now let's continue with the story. One afternoon, while adjusting the final details of the menu presentation for the opening, Sophia noticed Henry was closer than usual. He offered to help with something simple but stayed by her side longer than necessary. It was clear he was trying to regain some sense of normalcy between them, but Sophia knew things would never be the same. The night before the opening, Henry called Sophia for a last-minute meeting at the restaurant. When she arrived, she found him alone in the dining area, silently observing the space. He seemed lost in thought, but turned as soon as he heard her steps. "Thanks for coming," he said, approaching her. "You said it was urgent," Sophia replied, trying to hide her discomfort. Henry gestured to one of the tables, indicating he wanted her to sit. Once they were both seated, he began to speak. "I just wanted to make sure we're on the same page before tomorrow. This restaurant is more than just a business to me now. It's something we've built together. And I want you to know how much that means to me." Sophia felt a twinge of emotion in his words. She knew he was talking about the restaurant, but also knew there was more behind it. "It means a lot to me too," she said sincerely. "I never imagined I'd be here, working on something so big." and in a way, I owe it to you." Henry smiled slightly. "And I owe a lot to you, Sophia, more than I can express." The silence that followed was different from before. It wasn't uncomfortable, but filled with something unspoken. Sophia knew there was still a lot to resolve, both regarding the project and the feelings emerging between them. With the opening approaching, Sophia knew the restaurant would mark the beginning of a new phase in her life. But as she prepared to face her professional future, she also needed to decide what to do with the feelings that were starting to emerge, both hers and Henry's. The big day finally arrived. The restaurant was impeccable, with soft lights illuminating the carefully decorated tables. The aroma of fresh herbs in the indoor garden mingled with the smell of dishes coming out of the kitchen. It was a sight that combined the effort of weeks of intense work. Sophia felt the weight of responsibility, but also a pride she couldn't hide. Staff were running back and forth, finishing the details. Sophia was in the kitchen, adjusting the arrangement of ingredients and checking the service flow when Henry walked in. He was impeccably dressed, but there was something different in his expression, a mix of nervousness and anticipation. "Are you ready?" he asked, approaching her. Sophia gave a light smile. "I think so. And you?" Henry gave a short but sincere laugh. "If I said I was, I'd be lying, but I think with you here, our chances of success are higher." Sophia raised her eyebrows, surprised. That was almost a compliment. "I'm impressed." Henry smiled but quickly turned serious. "It's not almost. It's a full compliment, Sophia. You deserve it. This place exists because you were here to make it happen." Sophia looked away for a moment, so feeling the warmth of his words. Before she could respond, a waiter entered, announcing the first guests were arriving. The dining area quickly filled up. Business people, food critics, and high society figures occupied the tables, while staff moved with precision, serving appetizers and drinks. Sophia watched everything from the kitchen, ensuring every dish came out perfect. She knew that night could define the restaurant's future. Outside, Henry greeted the guests with his usual confidence, but his eyes frequently sought Sophia. Whenever he saw her, a strange sense of relief washed over him. It was as if she was his anchor on that night full of expectations. Mid-service, a renowned food critic asked to meet the chef responsible for the menu. Henry went to the kitchen calling Sophia. "You have an admirer," he said with a smile. "One of the most influential critics wants to talk to you." Sophia hesitated. "I don't know. What if he doesn't like something?" Henry placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, catching her off guard. "He's going to love it. Trust me. You're ready for this." Sophia took a deep breath and nodded, following Henry into the dining room. The meeting with the critic was brief but intense. Sophia answered his questions calmly and passionately, explaining the inspiration behind the dishes and the importance of using local ingredients. When the critic smiled and made a positive comment, Sophia felt as if a massive weight had been lifted off her shoulders. Henry watched from a distance, clearly pleased. When Sophia returned to the kitchen, he was there waiting for her. "I told you, you were ready," he said with a genuine smile. Sophia laughed, still emotional. "I guess you were right this time." Henry chuckled, but his expression quickly turned serious. "You're incredible, Sophia. There's no other way to describe what you've done here." She looked at him, a wave of conflicting emotions rising within her. Before she could respond, a waiter entered to inform them the main service needed to continue. Sophia quickly stepped away, diving back into her work. By the end of the night, the last guests were leaving, praising the restaurant and promising to return. The dining room was now almost empty, except for Henry and Sophia, seated at one of the tables, surrounded by empty plates and forgotten glasses. "We did it," Sophia said, glancing around. Henry nodded, watching her intently. "You did it. This place is a reflection of you, Sophia. Strong, authentic, and unique." Sophia chuckled softly. "I can't imagine you saying that to anyone else." "Because I wouldn't," Henry replied, his voice softer. She looked at him, noticing the intensity in his gaze. Before she could look away, Henry leaned in slightly. "I know I've said this before, but I can't help it. You mean so much more to me than this restaurant," he confessed, his voice filled with sincerity. Sophia felt her heart race, but remained silent. There was something in Henry's eyes that kept her from pulling away. It was vulnerability, something she had never seen in him before. Henry, she began hesitantly, I don't know if I'm ready for this. I'm still trying to understand what all of this means. He nodded slowly, not pushing her. That's okay. You don't have to decide anything now. I just needed you to know how I feel. The days following the grand opening were a whirlwind. The restaurant had been an overwhelming success, receiving praise from critics and guests alike. Reservations for the coming weeks were fully booked, and Sophia's name was already being mentioned as one of the rising stars in the culinary world. But while the restaurant thrived, Sophia found herself increasingly conflicted. Henry's words on opening night continued to echo in her mind, mixing with the complex emotions she had been developing. There was an undeniable connection between them, but also a deep fear of how this could affect everything they had built together. One afternoon, as Sophia was organizing inventory in the kitchen, Henry walked in. He was more casually dressed than usual, missing the suit that often made him seem so distant. There was a vulnerability in his expression. "Can we talk?" he asked, breaking the silence. Sophia stopped what she was doing and nodded, drying her hands on a towel before sitting on one of the nearby stools. Henry seemed nervous, something she rarely saw in him. "I know the opening was just the beginning. We have so much work ahead, but I need to talk about us, about what I said that night." Sophia took a deep breath, feeling the weight of a conversation she had been avoiding. "I don't know what to say, Henry. Everything has happened so fast. This restaurant, the way we've worked together, it's a lot to process." He nodded, understanding. "I know, and I don't want to pressure you. But, Sophia, I can't pretend I don't feel this. You've changed the way I see the world, the way I see what's important. And for the first time, I want something that has nothing to do with business or success." Sophia felt her eyes well up but stayed composed. "Henry, working with you has been the most challenging and amazing thing I've ever done. But mixing that with feelings, it's risky. What if it goes wrong? What if we lose everything we've built?" Henry held her gaze, his voice low but steady. "I understand your fears, but what we've built is more than just this restaurant. It's something bigger. And if you're willing to try, I promise to do everything I can not to mess this up." Sophia felt a lump in her throat. He was being honest, something rare for Henry Lancaster. But she knew this wasn't a decision she could make impulsively. "I need time," she said finally. Henry nodded again, respecting her answer. "I'll be waiting, no matter what you decide." In the following weeks, Sophia threw herself into work, but she couldn't get Henry out of her mind. He continued to be a dedicated partner at the restaurant, but it was clear there was something different in how he treated her. He gave her space, but also supported her in ways she had never expected. One night, after a busy service, Henry found her in the restaurant's garden. She was sitting on a bench, looking at the herbs they had planted together. "Is everything okay?" he asked, sitting down next to her. Sophia looked at him, feeling her heart race. "I'm fine, just thinking." Henry was silent for a moment before he spoke. "I know you need time, but I want you to know that no matter what you decide, this place will always be our partnership. Nothing will change that." Sophia felt a wave of emotion and for the first time allowed herself to be honest about her feelings. "Henry, you've made me see that I can dream big, that I can be more than I ever imagined. And as scary as that is, I think I'm willing to try." Henry looked at her, a mix of surprise and genuine happiness. "Are you serious?" Sophia smiled, slightly nervous but full of conviction. "Yes, but on one condition. Let's build this slowly. No rush, and we can't lose what we have here." Henry nodded, smiling in a way she had never seen before. "Deal. One step at a time." Months later, the restaurant continued to thrive, and Henry and Sophia's relationship grew stronger each day. They learned to balance work and personal life, supporting each other through challenges and celebrating victories together. One night, as they were closing the restaurant after a successful service, Henry took Sophia's hand. "Did you know it would be like this?" he asked playfully. Sophia laughed. "Not even in my wildest dreams." He smiled, squeezing her hand. "Well, I knew. From the moment you stood up to me in that kitchen." Sophia shook her head, laughing softly. "You're always so confident." "Only when I'm right," he replied before pulling her into a kiss, sealing the moment that was more than just a professional achievement. Things were going well at the restaurant. Sophia and Henry had found an unlikely balance, both in their work and the personal relationship that was beginning to form between them. However, like any sudden success, the restaurant started attracting more attention than they had anticipated, and not all of it was positive. One afternoon, as Sophia was finalizing plans for a private event, she was interrupted by Sarah, one of the servers. "Sophia, there's someone here to see you. She says it's important." Sophia frowned, not expecting anyone. When she went to the reception, she found a sophisticated-looking woman with a tense expression. Her eyes were a mix of determination and resentment. "Can I help you?" Sophia asked, trying to be polite. The woman lifted her chin, as if preparing for a battle. "My name is Eleanor Carter. I need to talk to you about Henry Lancaster." Sophia felt her stomach churn. Henry's name never came with something simple, and the way Eleanor pronounced it made her heart race. "Okay. Can we talk in the office?" Sophia suggested. Eleanor nodded, and they walked to the upstairs office. Once seated, Eleanor got straight to the point. "I don't know how much you know about Henry, but he has a reputation. He's great at using people for what he needs and then discarding them. You're just another one." Sophia blinked, trying to process the words. "I'm sorry, but I think you're mistaken. Henry is my business partner, and what we have here was built together." Eleanor gave a short, bitter laugh. "Partners? He said that to me too. 3 years ago, when he convinced me to invest in a project that he abandoned as soon as he didn't need me anymore." Sophia felt a lump in her throat. She knew Henry had a complicated past, but the intensity of Eleanor's words made her hesitate. "I don't know what happened between you, but Henry has been honest with me," she replied, with less conviction than she would have liked. Eleanor leaned forward, her eyes fixed on Sophia's. "I'm just saying, be careful. He's charming, but when something or someone stops being useful to him, Henry doesn't hesitate to cut them off. I know, I lived it." When Eleanor left, Sophia remained seated in the office, feeling the weight of the conversation. She knew she should ignore the words of a stranger, but insecurity began to creep in. What did she really know about Henry beyond what he showed day to day? That night, as they were closing the restaurant, Henry noticed Sophia was quieter than usual. "Are you okay?" he asked, stepping closer. Sophia hesitated but decided she needed to confront him. "Today, a woman named Eleanor Carter came to see me. She said you used her for a project years ago and then discarded her." Henry's expression hardened, and he ran a hand over his face, visibly frustrated. "Eleanor? I knew this day would come." He sighed, pulling out a chair to sit next to her. "What exactly did she say?" Sophia recounted everything without leaving out a single detail. When she finished, Henry looked more serious than she had ever seen him. "Eleanor isn't completely lying," he admitted. "But things aren't as simple as she makes them out to be." "So you did use her?" Sophia asked, her heart heavy. Henry shook his head. "It wasn't like that. We were partners on a project, but our visions were completely different. When I realized it wasn't going to work, I decided to leave. Yes, it was abrupt, and yes, it hurt her, but I never intended to harm her. I just did what I thought was best at the time." Sophia studied his face, searching for any hint of dishonesty. He seemed sincere, but there was something about the situation she couldn't ignore. "And now?" she asked. "What guarantees you won't do the same to me?" Henry met her gaze, the tension between them growing. "You, Sophia, you're the guarantee. What we have here, what we've built together, is unlike anything I've ever done before. And if that's not enough to convince you, I don't know what else I can do." Sophia wanted to believe him, but Eleanor's words still echoed in her mind. Even so, she decided to give Henry a chance. After all, he had proven trustworthy so far. The next morning, while they were reviewing preparations for a tasting event with new investors, Sophia was caught off guard by a phone call. "It's from Gourmet Luxury magazine," Sarah said, handing her the phone. Sophia answered, and the reporter on the other end got straight to the point. "Good morning, Sophia. We're working on a feature about the success of your restaurant. However, we've also received information about some of Mr. Lancaster's past partnerships that didn't end well. We'd like your opinion on what it's like to work with him." Sophia's stomach churned. It felt like a trap, but she knew she needed to tread carefully. Henry is a demanding leader, but he's also someone who values teamwork. What we've built here was achieved through a lot of dedication on both sides, and the results speak for themselves," she replied in a neutral tone. The reporter asked a few more questions, but Sophia managed to end the call without providing any compromising information. When she told Henry about the conversation, he was visibly upset. "Looks like Eleanor is trying to damage my reputation publicly," he said, clenching his fists. "I knew she held a grudge, but this is too much." "Maybe you should talk to her," Sophia suggested hesitantly. Henry looked at her, clearly reluctant. "I don't know if she'll listen, but maybe you're right." That evening, Henry arranged to meet Eleanor at a quiet cafe. Sophia didn't know what to expect, but hoped he would be honest. When Henry returned, he seemed more at ease. "We talked," he said, finding Sophia at the restaurant. "I think I was able to clear up some things. I don't know if she'll forgive me, but at least she knows it was never my intention to hurt her." Sophia saw the sincerity in his eyes, and for the first time since Eleanor's visit, she felt like she could breathe easier. With the conflict with Eleanor seemingly resolved, Sophia felt things were returning to normal. However, the external pressures on the restaurant were only beginning to mount. With their meteoric success, the public and media scrutiny was more intense than ever, and any misstep could spell disaster for everything she and Henry had built. One afternoon, as Sophia reviewed performance reports in her office, Sarah interrupted her with an urgent call. "Sophia, you need to see this. It's all over social media," she said, her voice tense. Sophia rushed to the reception area, where Sarah held a tablet open to a news page. The headline left Sophia speechless. "Accusations against Henry Lancaster, broken partnerships and unkept promises." The article detailed several stories involving Henry, including Eleanor's. While there was nothing illegal or overtly unethical mentioned, the tone painted Henry as manipulative, using people to achieve his goals. The article also mentioned the restaurant, insinuating that Sophia could be Henry's next victim. Let's play a game with those who only read the comments. Type burger in the comments. Only those who make it here will understand. Now let's continue with the story. Sophia felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. She knew this was an attack on Henry, but she also knew how much it could hurt the restaurant. Henry arrived shortly after, clearly already aware of the situation. He walked into the office with a tense but determined look. "Did you see?" he asked, throwing his jacket over the chair. Sophia nodded, crossing her arms. "I saw. This is bad, Henry. Not just for you, but for the restaurant." Henry took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "I know that, and I'm handling it. I've already contacted my lawyers to see how we can respond." Sophia watched him for a moment, looking for any sign of doubt or guilt. But Henry seemed genuinely concerned. "The question is, what do we do now? How can we protect the restaurant from this?" she asked. Henry looked at her, his face softening slightly. "We keep going. We do what we do best. We show that the restaurant is more than a name or a headline. It's about the work we put in here, and nothing can take that away from us." In the following days, Sophia and Henry doubled their efforts to keep the restaurant running smoothly. They decided the best response would be continued success. However, the critical looks and incessant questions from the media began to affect the staff's morale. On a busy night, a customer asked to speak with Henry. Sophia stood aside, watching the interaction. "Mr. Lancaster, what do you have to say about the accusations?" the customer asked, clearly more interested in gossip than the food. Henry remained calm, but Sophia could see how much it bothered him. "My focus is on this restaurant and making sure you have a memorable experience," he replied, his tone polite but firm. The customer seemed satisfied with the answer, but Sophia knew Henry was nearing his limit. Later that night, Sophia found Henry in the restaurant's garden. He was sitting on one of the benches, looking at the horizon, clearly trying to process everything that was happening. "Are you okay?" she asked, approaching him. Henry sighed but didn't look at her immediately. "No. I'm tired, Sophia. Tired of being seen as something I'm not. I know I've made mistakes in the past, but I'm not the person they're making me out to be." Sophia sat next to him, keeping silent for a few moments before responding. "I know. I see who you are now. And honestly, I think this restaurant is your chance to show that to the world." Henry finally looked at her, his eyes showing gratitude. "Do you believe that?" Sophia nodded, holding his gaze. I believe, and I'll fight for it just as much as you. The next day, an unexpected opportunity arose. A renowned food critic, who had previously ignored the restaurant, scheduled a visit. Sophia and Henry knew this could change the narrative around them, but the nervousness was palpable. Sophia spent hours in the kitchen, ensuring every dish was perfect. When the critic arrived, Henry greeted him personally, making sure to exude confidence and professionalism. The service was impeccable, and as the critic tasted each dish, Sophia felt her heart in her throat. After dinner, the critic asked to speak with both of them. I have to admit, this is one of the best dinners I've ever had, he said with a satisfied smile. You've created something extraordinary here. Sophia almost sighed in relief, while Henry smiled, genuinely moved. Thank you. That means a lot to us, Henry replied. The critic asked a few questions about the restaurant's concept and their partnership. Sophia answered with passion, highlighting the teamwork and dedication they put into the project. When the critic left, promising a positive review, Sophia felt like they had won a battle. Later that night, Sophia and Henry celebrated their success with a glass of wine in the empty restaurant hall. I think we did it, Henry said, raising his glass. Sophia smiled, clinking her glass against his. We did, but we can't let our guard down. Henry nodded, but his expression softened. Sophia, I couldn't have done this without you. Not just the restaurant, but facing all of this. Sophia felt her heart race. Before she could respond, Henry leaned slightly toward her. You are the best thing that's ever happened to me, he confessed, his voice low but full of emotion. Sophia was silent for a moment, but finally let a shy smile escape. And you're not so bad yourself, Lancaster. Henry laughed, and for the first time in weeks, they both allowed themselves to relax, knowing that together, they could handle anything. The weeks following the restaurant's success were intense but filled with accomplishments. The glowing review from a renowned critic brought a steady stream of customers and cemented the restaurant's reputation as one of the city's best. Sophia and Henry were more connected than ever, though their work pace remained exhausting. One afternoon, while reviewing reports in the office, Henry suddenly stood up and leaned against the window, watching the street below. We need a break, he said, still gazing outside. Sophia, focused on the numbers, looked up confused. A break? The restaurant is at its peak. We're booked for the next 2 months and… Henry turned around, cutting her off with a smile. Exactly. We've been working non-stop since this project began. I think we've earned a few days to breathe. Sophia frowned. And what are you suggesting? A trip, he replied as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Just the two of us, to disconnect, relax, and enjoy the moment. Sophia's heart raced. The idea seemed surreal, but also tempting. Where exactly, she asked, trying to sound indifferent. Henry smiled, a mix of mystery and excitement on his face. It's a surprise. Just pack your things. We're leaving early tomorrow. The next morning, Sophia waited anxiously in the building's lobby when Henry's car pulled up. He stepped out, dressed casually, a rare sight, and opened the passenger door for her. Ready? He asked. Sophia laughed, still intrigued. I think so, but you still haven't told me where we're going. Henry winked, a playful smile on his lips. Trust me. Hours later, the car stopped in front of a charming lakeside cabin. The scenery was breathtaking. Mountains surrounded the crystal-clear water, and the sound of trees swaying in the wind created an atmosphere of tranquility. Sophia was speechless. This is amazing, she said as she stepped out of the car. Henry carried the bags and smiled, pleased with her reaction. I thought a place like this would be perfect for us to disconnect. Sophia looked around at the cabin, the lake, and the landscape. It felt like stepping into another world, far from the restaurant's pressures and external expectations. She finally said. After settling in, Henry suggested they spend the afternoon exploring the area around the lake. They walked along shaded trails, with birdsong and the scent of wildflowers creating an almost magical setting. Sophia felt more relaxed than she had in months. You know, I never imagined you as someone who'd enjoy peace and quiet, she teased as they walked. Henry laughed. I guess you don't know me as well as you think. There's a side of me most people never see. Maybe I'm starting to show it to you. Sophia's heart raced at his words, but she decided to keep the mood light. Well, this side of you is much more pleasant than the one barking orders at the restaurant. Henry laughed loudly, shaking his head. I probably deserved that. That evening, Henry prepared a simple but delicious dinner on the cabin's porch. Soft lights illuminated the table, while the fresh lake breeze made the setting even cozier. Sophia couldn't stop smiling as she saw him so relaxed, a stark contrast to the Henry she had met months ago. "So, what do you think of the trip so far?" he asked, pouring wine into her glass. "I'm loving it," Sophia replied sincerely. "I think it's exactly what I needed." Henry raised his glass. "To us and to what we've built together." Sophia raised hers as well, feeling completely at ease. To us. After dinner, they walked to the lake's edge where Henry had set up a small bonfire. They sat side by side, watching the flames dance as the stars began to fill the sky. "You know, when we started the restaurant, I never thought we'd end up here," Henry said, breaking the silence. Sophia looked at him curiously. "Here? You mean, in this place?" Henry shook his head. "No. Here, like this. Working together, trusting each other, building something that's so uniquely ours." Sophia smiled, sensing the sincerity in his words. "I didn't think so either, but deep down I always knew we made a good team, even when you were impossible." Henry chuckled but quickly grew serious. "And now? What do you think we are?" Sophia's heart raced. It was a question she'd been asking herself for weeks, but had never dared to answer. "I think we're more than partners, more than friends." She paused, looking at the fire. "But where this leads us, I don't know yet." Henry was silent for a moment before leaning in slightly towards her. "We can figure it out together." Sophia turned to him, and before she could say anything, Henry kissed her. It was a moment full of emotion, as if all the barriers between them had finally fallen. When they pulled apart, Sophia looked at him, still processing what had happened. "That was unexpected." Henry smiled. "Maybe, but I think it was about time." Sophia couldn't help but smile. For the first time in months, she felt like everything was in the right place. What did you think of Sophia and Henry's story? Leave your opinion in the comments. From 0 to 10, what rating would you give this story? If you enjoyed it, subscribe to our channel and see you in the next video.